Hello and welcome everyone. Today we'll talk about guix and the way we can create and maintain configuration for it. You know that guix is a functional package manager which allows not only to build packages but also to build the whole operating system and also parts of operating systems like home environment. For this, there is a guix services mechanism which allows to define configuration for particular application and also do all additional steps like installing packages, installing the configurations in proper locations, and create shepherd services or other stuff. And for those who are not very familiar with it, let's take a look at a simple example. For example, here I just extend home profile service type with a list of packages, and those packages will be installed in my user profile. Also, there is another example when I define different SSH hosts and configuration for them, and after that I can take a look at SSH config and see, for example, configuration for host pinky YGG here in my SSH configuration. This way we can configure and install a lot of programs, both in system profile and user profile, but also we can configure some things like bootloader and UDF rules and other things. If you are still confused about what is happening here, please refer to the previous streams where we discussed services in more details. Today we will be talking more about writing and maintaining configuration and how to structure files, how to set load passes and other things. Let's take a look at examples directory of RD repository. Here we have just two files and two directories, and entry point is makefile, and here you can see that there are just a few targets, and we will go through all of them during today's stream, and maybe we'll write a few more. Another file is pre-inst.env, which just sets load pass. Originally it looks, in the example directory, looks like that, but I add a few more local directories in my local setup to be able to pull the latest feature which are not committed to the channels yet. But what basically happens here, we add src directory to guile load pass, and after that execute a command passed as a first argument to the script with guile load pass updated. It makes possible to have multiple files in src directory, which you can see here, and split our configuration in few files. And later we will discuss why we would like to split it. Okay. We saw the entry point, but before that, let's try to recap what RD features. RD features is another mechanism which works on top of system and home services from guix, and it solves a few issues. For example, with guix services, it's not very convenient to share values between services. This is a first problem. The second problem is that you don't have a polymorphic behavior. You can't substitute one service with another, or you can't add a conditional behavior. For example, if one service is defined, extended. If it's not, doesn't do anything, or something like that. And RD features has a big registry with a lot of values which are shared among all the features. And the second thing, there's a way to see if some feature is defined, then we include some system or home services in our final configuration. If they're not defined, we just skip them. And all other similar logic can be implemented in the similar way. This is done to split the whole big configuration in a few smaller pieces, which are easier to maintain and understand and to reason about. And basically, a feature is just a function, just a record which has two functions. First one returning home services, and the second one returning system services. And those functions can use those shared values. Let's take a look at some simple example. For example, I don't know, password utils. What we have here? Here we say that we need a GPG primary key to be defined in global registry. We need a home directory to be defined as well. And after that, we install password store package in our home profile. Also, we define password store state, which basically not that important for today talk. Let's see what else we have here. If we have emacs value defined in our RD configuration, then it adds RD elisp configuration service to the list of home services, which extends our emacs configuration with the following code, adding some functionality to our emacs configuration. And also it installs a few emacs packages. And after that, we define a few values which can be used by other features. And let's see another feature GNU-PG, which defines GPG primary key value, which is used by password utils. Actually, maybe you have Sequoia and you use it for managing your GPG keys, and the Sequoia can provide this value instead of GNU-PG. And this is what I call polymorphic behavior. It's not very important where this thing come from, but if it comes, it's good. I can use it. If it doesn't, the reconfiguration will fail and will say that we have some value missing. This is relatively simple mechanism, and you can see that the implementation takes just 400 lines, and most of them some kind of boilerplate where we define imports and export variables and define records that we will use later, and the whole implementation just looks like a one function of 20 lines, and everything else is some helper functions and boilerplate. Is it possible to extend some of features with a custom guix channel that depends on RD? It's quite easy to define your own features. Those features can rely on RD features, but there is no easy way to extend the RD features from your channel. But all RD features relies on home and system services mechanism. That is why if your feature defines some services which extends the services defined by some RD features, this way it can extend it. For example, let's take at my configuration and let's see feature SSH. Here in my configuration we have feature SSH defined with no options set. But if I take a look at configs file, I will see here that there is SSH extra config service defined, which basically extends home SSH service, which is used by feature SSH. Feature SSH defines home SSH service, and this service can be extended by home services mechanism, and here using feature custom services I just define that I want to extend SSH with this service defined above. In this way I extend feature SSH capabilities. It's not exactly extension of feature SSH, it's more like an extension of SSH service, home SSH service, but it's still very viable option. Also, if I want to rely on the values, on RD values, I can define another feature which will have access to those RD values and will be able to use it and to define extension for SSH service, which also relies on these RD values. I hope I answered your question. Let's get back to our configuration and its structure. Okay, we already started exploring configs SCM. Configs SCM is basically an entry point for our configuration source code. But let's go to examples directory. Let's take a look at directory structure. We have RD subdirectory, which contains channels and channels log, and also profiles directory. Profiles directory has guix profile and generations of this guix profile. Also, we have src directory with abcdw subdirectory, and this subdirectory contains the source of our configuration. The source is split into a few files and a few subdirectories. The entry point is config.scm, which contains the personal configuration and also some things gathered from other files. For example, configs exports imports values from emacs and general and hosts files, and use features and lists of features defined in them. Also, we have a makefile here, which actually not needed, and I will probably remove it. And minimal emacs, which is also I think for demonstration purpose and for one of my previous streams, which is not actually needed. Yep. And also there is a config subdirectory, which contains some configuration files for Alacrity, Sway, and the MOOCs, which actually some of them already covered by the features. Some of those configuration is not converted to RD and guix services, so they still present here as just plain configuration, which can be included in our RD configuration. Okay, let's talk about channels, profiles, and guix pool, because this is important thing that will make our configuration truly reproducible. And also can explain some guix related things that may be not clear at the beginning. Let's see what make targets we have here, and I will explain by the example how it is related to channels and to guix pool. Jonathan says, great, thanks. I like RDU very much and want to integrate it into my configuration. I'm glad to hear it, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure to see that people like things you do and want to integrate them in their workflows. I think it is a sign of the quality of your work sometimes. Okay, let's get back to our profiles. First thing first, we define RD profiles target, which just creates RD profiles subdirectory. Actually, I hope you know how makefile works, but I will repeat a few basic ideas. In makefile, you define a target, and after that, a few commands that should be performed to build this target. For example, here, to build RD profiles directory, you just need to create it. But to build RD profiles guix subdirectory, you need to build RD profiles directory first, and also you need to build RD channels log SCM first. And to build RD channels log SCM, you need RD channels file, and after that you need to execute a few commands. First one adds a line to channels log tmp file. After that we call guix time machine with RD channels provided, and takes the result, call describe variable with format, which returns a list of S expressions, and save the result to channels log tmp scm. And after that we move RD channels log tmp to RD channels log. And that's basically it. It could be actually a move call, but okay, let's keep it for now. Let's see what we have in channels here. Oops. We have pretty small list of channels: default guix channel and RD channel. That's it. After that, after we call make with RD channels log scm target, we will get the following result. The difference between channels log and channels file is clear. We have a specific commit here, and we don't have the specific commit in channels scm. The exact commit allows us to know which version of the channel we used to build this particular configuration. Having those log files allows to make our configuration hugely reproducible, because we will use the same version of packages, and the configuration for those packages will be for exact version of the programs, and everything should work. If it was working already, it will still work on the other machine or 10 years after we build this configuration, and so on. After we build a channels log file, we generate a profile with guix and all the channels built, and we do it with guix pool. We specify the channels log file to guix pool command, but instead of pulling to the usual location, usually when we do guix pool, it pulls all the channels defined in the file specified after minus capital C, and put the source code in the directory and set up appropriate load passes and so on. And usually this directory is config guix current, and here you see a profile which contains guix command and all other stuff from those channels, but we will put the result not in this default directory, but in our specific guix profile directory. And guix profile directory is equal to this value, and here you can see in RD profiles we have guix, which is symbolic link to guix1 link, which is a symbolic link to actual profile in the GNU store. The reason we have guix one link here is because when you do guix pull, you generate a new generation. Every time you do guix pull, you create new generation. And if if I run rd profiles guix, one more time, I should get one more link here after it finished. And it helps in case our new channel version have a buggy program or something else. I can easily roll back to the previous version of our channel and use it to build my system or my home configuration. Hope you're doing well. Thank you. I'm actually doing well, and thank you for your care. Very much appreciated. Okay. I think we will keep this building process in the background, and we'll go to the actual configuration and we'll explore its structure. Let's go to our entry point, which is config.scm. We have a lot of imports here, but most of them actually not needed. I just not cleaned it up yet, but I will do it sure. After that, I have a few helpers, which just simplifies some parts of configuration, but doesn't introduce any interesting things. For example, mail list, just a function which accepts 3 arguments and returns a mailing list record with L2MD repo record inside config. Nothing really interesting here. After that, I have a few services, which is not very interesting as well. The first one is just adds a list of packages to emacs. Why we add packages to emacs service separately from home profile? This is because we may want to rebuild those packages with specific emacs version. That is why we specify them with emacs service rather than home profile service. Oh, we can see that build process finished, and if you take a look, rd profiles directory, it still has only one link. Okay. Oh, it's probably because nothing to be done here. Nothing changed. We didn't change the channels, and that's probably why we didn't get another generation of rd profile. Okay, let's get back to our configuration. Home extra packages is basically a service extending home profile with a list of packages, and sway extra config service is just my personal sway configuration, which is pretty simple and also not doesn't introduce too much interesting stuff. I just add a hotkey for player ktl command for play pause and next track, and also a few more hotkeys and configurations. Also, here is also my personal preferences. I add I2P D tunnel, which allows to connect to IRC Elita IRC server, and also I have extra SSH configuration, which is also meaningful only for my configuration, which contains a few hosts and some settings for them. That's it. Later we will just add those services to the list of home services. And here we start with RD features. Those RD features are my personal settings as well. The first one is feature user info, which defines some information about my user. After that, we have a feature GNU-PG, which also personal settings because I specify my GPG primary key here. Feature security token is also kinda specific for me because not everyone uses security tokens or hardware tokens, and that is why I think it's not useful for everyone. After that, I have feature password store, which actually features that can be useful for almost everyone, but here I have a remote password store URL, which is address of my backup repository with my passwords. This thing probably can be implemented in a slightly different way. For example, I could move it to a special registry of states, which should be synchronized and initialized separately, and use this feature as it is, and make it source this value from this registry of states. But I didn't finished the re-implementation of states yet, so it looks like this for now. After that, I define my mail accounts and mailing lists I would like to follow, and here I follow a mailing list using public inbox, which synchronize Git repository with all the emails to my local machine, and after that, not much indexes all those mails, and they are available in my mail client. Also, I define feature IRC settings, which sets IRC accounts, and those IRC accounts can be used in other features. For example, feature ERC, which is emacs client for IRC, and I can connect to IRC. Whoop. Interesting. Let me see. Okay. And now I can connect to IRC network using my ERC, and the values for IRC accounts is taken from feature IRC. But I could use some other IRC client, and those values will be useful for this IRC client as well. Let's see what next. Next we have feature custom services with just a list of services. Nothing too much special. We just extend home services with some values needed for our configuration. After that, I have two feature SSH proxy, which makes tunnels, SSH tunnels between my host and the remote host for development purpose and for some other purposes. Also, I set feature xdg and set the values for xdg user directories to those one. I don't know, I prefer lowercase and a little shorter names, not to pollute my home folder. And the last thing we have here is feature keyboard, which have layouts, English and Russian layouts, and English layout is not default but Dvorak. And also I have Control and caps lock swapped, and I have double shift for switching layouts. That's it. This was my personal settings, but it's very likely that there's some settings which are actually also personal, but they're in a different place called main features. I still not finished refactoring the example configuration. I did quite a lot of work, but not finished yet. And here we have two general features, which may be not useful for everyone. Feature Yggdrasil and feature I2PD. Also, we have a feature emacs keycast package, which may be not also useful for everyone, but because I stream and it's good to show in the status bar the commands I use and hotkeys I use, this feature is nice to have for me. There is also a configuration for templates, which probably will be removed when I will move it to some feature, probably to feature guix. And I have emacs spelling with Russian dictionary, which is also maybe not very useful for everyone, so it's kinda personal setting. And here we have a few features which useful for many people, but which has some values specific for my use case. It can be done the other way, using states and registry of states, where I define the states, and here in the features I will use a reference to the state instead of actual path. So I will be able to define all my states in one place and just use those features without specifying exact directories. But it's a task for the future, not for right now. Also, I have feature JavaScript and Clojure here. Feature JavaScript comes from contrib directory. It's not included in RD features, but it's very close to it. Feature Clojure uses Clojure LSP, which should be provided as a package, but it's not packaged yet in guix, and also it's not packaged in RD. But I have some private directory with this package, and I don't publish it because it's packaged not in a proper way. I just took a binary built with GraalVM and put it in the directory, and after that created a package for it. But later, when we will package it properly, it can be specified here, or will be specified the default value for Clojure LSP in feature Clojure. Okay, and a few more settings related to not much. This is search that I use, plus a list of default searches defined in the feature mail model. And that's it. This is a place where my personal settings ends, and after that we will have only general settings. The next section is actually a section where we define RD configuration, and RD configuration has a list of features, and those features consist of my personal settings, emacs features, general features, and IXY or IXY features, which are defined in separate models. Let's start from hosts IXY features. As you can see, the structure of the directories, we have host subdirectory, which contains two models, IXY and live, and those files are maintained separately because it hosts specific features which are not interesting for everyone, but which are useful only for specific hardware. So I place those features in a separate model. Hi Grigory, hi Demis, nice to see you here. Nothing too interesting here. We have a file system declaration. We have a host info feature, which sets a few arguments like hostname, time zone. We have feature file systems. We have feature high DPI because I have a high resolution display. I need this feature to make fonts on my TTIs bigger and easier for my eyes to read in case I need to work in TTI. Actually TTY. And feature country, which declares two profiles for survey in case I have a charger plugged and have the output, another output plugged with scaling, because I had a 4K monitor at home and it was too small, the text was too small, so I had to use a scaling here. That's it. Everything hardware specific, which is not needed for other hosts. The same thing for live system. I'm not finished yet here, but we have file system, maybe different bootloader, and hostname and so on. That's it about host specific features. Let's take a look at emacs model, what it contains. I moved it out because RD can be used to manage your whole operating system, your home profile, or on your emacs setup. And this is why we have emacs features in a separate model to make it possible for people to use only emacs configuration without whole operating system. And it's relatively basic emacs configuration. We have some UI tweaks, we have completion tweaks, some default packages configurations, and a few more external packages, which seems to be useful in general in most cases. If you don't like some of those features and don't want to be them included in your final configuration, the list of features is actually just a list. You can filter it with commands like filter or remove, and remove features by its name. It's should be quite easy. Let's try to do it. We have list of features here, and we want to remove let's say equal f feature name of f. What we want to remove. For example, let's say we don't want feature telega. Let's go emacs xyz and find this feature. We can see that it returns feature with name fname, and fname is equal to telega. Emacs telega. So let's remove it. Configs emacs telega. Looks good to me. I called for documentation for remove, and for some reason it takes a lot of time. I don't know why, but okay. And let's rebuild it. Let's rebuild my configuration, and this new configuration should lack this feature. Actually, we can do it. We can check it without rebuilding the whole configuration. We will print rd-config, and this command should print all the features we have. Remove guile srf1 srfi1. Okay. Use models srfi1. Okay, now we see a lot of services here, and we want to find emacs telega. As we see, we didn't find it, but if I will remove call and will restart the build process, oops, telega, we now see that emacs telega value is present. Oh, actually, the rebuild finished quite fast, even during the stream. Okay, this easy way to remove features you don't need, even if they defined in some feature list. You can do the same thing to substitute a feature with your own implementation or to remove it completely. It's just easy as manipulating basic lists. Grigory says how to make it TTI console font even bigger than predefined sizes, more than 20x20. Actually, I don't know. There are few console fonts, and I use one of them, which I actually don't even remember the name, which has enough size to see on my high DPI screen. Yeah, the feature country is already present and you can use it. It actually here already for a few months at least, maybe more. I don't remember when we added. The other very basic feature is feature danced, or some other feature which will show the notifications for Sway. I don't have it yet, so I don't have those notifications, but in some cases they can be actually useful. But as always, be careful with notifications because they are quite destructive and can interrupt your workflow and make your workflow reactive, which is not very attention friendly. Okay, we created our list of features from few lists. Actually, those two will be merged probably in one list. And emacs features, general features. Let's see what general features has. General SCM model contains base features like base services, desktop services, feature pipewire, backlight, network, transmission ledger, MPV, iSync, L2MD, MSMTP. Structuring and making hierarchies is always a tough task, and there is no very special about this hierarchy. It's just a list of feature lists which is meaningful for me. You can split them in a different way if you want. I just decided to have base features, dev features, UI features, and here I can navigate with iMenu between them to easier find the feature I need. And UI features contains feature fonts, feature sway, feature run, sway run on TTY, feature sway screenshot, way bar, sway idle, sway lock, and that's it. CLI features is a terminal, alacrity terminal, vterm, which adds vterm support to emacs, feature tmax, zsh, bash, dir env, git ssh, and all those feature lists get appended and combined and defined as general features. You can use those feature lists separately. You can use those features as a part of general features list. You can skip and don't use those features at all. And after that, I use these general features and add them to the list of my features and combine with host specific features. And after that, I get a configuration for my setup, and from this configuration I can extract two parts, operating system and home environment, using respective rd config operating system and rd config home environment getters, which returns operating system suitable for guix system command and home environment suitable for guix home command. Okay, we remember that guix system and guix home commands accepts a file, but not a variable or expression of something. How to make a file return different records based on some criteria. For this we have a very small helper or trick called dispatcher. And dispatcher is a function which doesn't accept any arguments, but it depends on environment variable. This is why this is not a pure function, because it relies on some global state, and depending on the value of this environment variable, on RD target variable, it returns different values. If RD target is XC home, we return XC home environment variable. If it's XC system, it returns XC operating system, and using this variable, we can control which value will be returned by this model. And let's take a look. Let's take a look at our makefile targets, and we'll see how it's used here. I already explained what guix profile is. I already explained what pre-inst env script does, and here we combine guix profile with pre-inst env script and define guix variable, which will be used in our guix invocations later. Also, we have two more variables. abcdwdir is a directory with source code of my configurations, and home config variable which contains a path to the entry point for my configurations, which is configs scm file. After that, we define a simple target called xc home reconfigure. The logic of naming this target is following. Here you see that those targets are related to actual files, but this target is not related to actual file, but there's some logic behind the naming. We have our host here, the home or system for home environment and operating system, and reconfigure is the action which we use to build this target. And for example, we can copy this target and instead of reconfigure use build here, and here will be build action. This way we can build our home environment without reconfiguring to it, to check if it built correctly or to see what will be inside this new home environment and so on. Also, we can run it in container or something else. But in most cases, I just straight reconfigure my home environment with a new version, and if something breaks, I can roll back using guix home rollback action. Okay, how the final command looks. We set environment variable rd target to xc home. After that, use guix command provided by this variable. Use home subcommand, reconfigure action, a few arguments like fallback and no grafts, and allow downgrades. Actually, we don't need it, I think, at least anymore. And specify the file which will return our home environment based on rd target. That's it. Pretty simple command, and you already saw how the reconfiguration process looks. You can see how this command get expanded. You can see the actual values of the variables here, and backslash used to join a few lines in one command and not execute those lines separately. And the reconfiguration process looks like this. Those debug output present because we didn't comment this line. Okay, we covered dispatcher trick. What else we have here? I think that's almost it for today that I wanted to cover. Let's make some kind of summary. First of all, this is not the only way you can use for managing your configuration. It's also maybe not the perfect way, but it is one of the ways which I find useful, and also I find it easier to reason about such configuration, because, for example, I rarely touch general features or emacs features. I update them from time to time when I add some new functionality to our RD, but rarely change some arguments for them and so on. But I relatively often touch my personal settings. I update a list of packages I need, I update some hotkeys, I update some SSH hosts, and so on. That is why those features are present here, and I have fast access to them. And other features moved to separates model, and I touch them rarely, so it's not very important for me to have fast access to them. And host specific features is also in separate model, because I really rarely touch them, almost never, only on the first configuration of my system. Okay, also the good idea to keep a log of your channels, a log file, which you can use to rebuild your guix using guix pool command, and using this guix pool with specific version of channels, you will build your operating system and home environment, and will get the exactly same system and home environment on your new machine or your old machine, but after you wiped your hard drive or changed something or did something else. And the most interesting and neat and useful thing, that you have a complete configuration of your operating system, even not cleaned up with some stale imports and maybe some unnecessary packages that I have here. You have under 500 of lines of code configuration, which describes your whole operating system and home environment, which is quite manageable and easy to reason about. And I think that we need to keep our configuration tidy and relatively small to make it maintainable and nice to work with. Okay, that's it for today. I'm really glad to see everyone here, and see you in a bit. Bye bye.